Everybody, I just want to make some kind of off-the-cuff remarks about Lizzo playing James Madison's flute. That sort of caught my attention. I didn't really know who Lizzo was. I think I'd seen her name come up a time or two recently in just videos and news clips and things, but I didn't really know that much about her. I don't listen to her music. But I was kind of interested in the debate that followed after she played James Madison's flute. That's a crystal flute. It was given to James Madison, I guess, in 1813. So it definitely is a precious object of American history. It definitely should be given respect. It definitely should be honored, like the memory of James Madison, who did so much to found this country and that we all benefit from. But I watched the video of her playing it. First, they gave her several historic flutes, and she played in the sort of the foyer or the large space in the Library of Congress. She's a good flautist, and I thought it seemed fine. It didn't seem like she was disrespectful or trying to make a statement. She was just playing some historic flutes. So I feel like a lot of the people on both sides of the political spectrum have been kind of turning this into yet another sort of moment in the culture war. And I think that's too bad because if the flute was handled properly, then it's nice that it was played in a way that kind of reminded us of the flute and James Madison, if that's what they were trying to do. I didn't get the impression that she had any ill will or was trying to make some kind of a statement denouncing James Madison or something when she played the flute. She seemed, friendly and smiling and, she wasn't wearing a tuxedo and an evening gown. I don't know if that a lot of people, when they hear classical music, if you're not wearing a tuxedo, that's a problem. But she didn't seem to have any kind of a hostility towards the flute or anything like that, or see it as sort of some big cultural moment of dialectical clash of some kind. She just played the flute. It's a historic flute. It's a precious part of American history. And as long as she did it in that capacity, and then I certainly don't have a problem with it. I think a lot of the other people that are commenting are the ones that sort of want to make an issue out of everything. And I saw videos from both sides of the political spectrum. I watched a few. I'm not going to get into any of the names of the people, but a lot of people, James Madison, slave owner, and Lizzo playing his flute was some kind of a statement about, the sort of a triumph of sorts or something. And the other people on the other side saw it as sort of a desecration of the memory of a great founding father. And if it was either of those things, I would object. If it was either of those things, I would object because the flute represents something very precious about our great nation that we have, that we should all cherish and honor. And I didn't get the impression that she was trying to make any kind of a anti-American statement or anything like that. One of the things is she's heavy set, and I've struggled with my weight my whole life, so I'm certainly not going to get on her about that. And there have been plenty of great musicians who are overweight. In fact, one of the problems I have with pop music these days is it's so based on visuals. It's actually kind of refreshing to see someone that maybe doesn't fit the mold of a kind of a sexy pop star. So many of those sexy pop stars aren't that talented. She seems like she really knows what she's doing. I think that's great. How she was dressed, I saw. Now she performed later with the flute, and it almost looked like she wasn't wearing anything, like a see-through negligee, and she is a larger woman. Like I said, so maybe, and I think she was kind of jumping around. Maybe it's just, I don't know, that's how she is or something. I still didn't necessarily think she was trying to be make some kind of revolutionary statement about the flute. I do remember, we've had a lot of talk about January 6th, and people went through the Capitol building, and, that we all are, opposed to any kind of vandalism or invasion of our sacred public spaces in America, needless to say. But one of the things it seems like we've almost forgotten about is that summer of 2020 when all those protests were going on, that big protest out in front of the White House where people were trying to get into the White House. That was the same one out in Lafayette Park where they were trying to topple that statue of Andrew Jackson, which was done by Clark Mills, one of the great sculptors of American history, is certainly one of the great pieces of North American statuary. And they almost toppled it. Thank goodness they didn't. You know, they ruined so many beautiful statues. And that was the same time they burned that historic church that George Washington went to, and there wasn't much outrage. I think people were outraged that the president went over there to have his picture taken or something. But burning a church is never, ever okay. That is an appalling act of hatred and destruction. But one of the things I remember is they were trying to get into the White House. You know, they have that iron fence in front of the White House and people were trying to get in. And I remember thinking, man, if they get in that White House, all the statues that I think by July they'd already toppled a bunch of Christopher Columbus statues, a bunch of the Pioneer and the Stag, some of those Northeast statues. They went from Southern war generals right on down the line. You lit statues of Ulysses S. Grant, statues of Abraham Lincoln. I mean, just about anybody that was done with that sort of classical plastic art style. I mean, all kinds of statues were toppled. What an atrocity! And I kind of thought that now. I don't know why at least some of the reactions to the flute kind of reminded me of that sort of. I don't think Lizzo had it. But some people seem to, that kind of destructive impulse to kind of destroy history, destroy culture, that's always very bad. And I didn't get that sense, but I actually got that sense a little bit with some of the people commenting about Lizzo and what a great thing it was that she played this James Madison flute. Somehow it was this kind of statement. They didn't see it as music. It was like they didn't even see that this is a woman that's trained in music playing a historic flute. She's an American, and she was playing this historic American flute. They didn't even, they made a few obligatory remarks about she's a trained flautist, but they saw it more in the terms of the sort of the cultural, racial dynamics, and I think that's really too bad. But I remember that night they were trying to break into the White House, and I thought, man, if they get in there, those big Gilbert Stuart portraits of Washington, isn't that in there? Thomas Remington, that place is just full of really priceless things. They're priceless because you couldn't ever replace those things. You know, some of the great art of American history. And I thought, man, if they get in there with some of the destruction we've seen the last couple months, that'll really be. It'd be worse than the British would have done back in 1812. You know, it'd be horrible. And that didn't happen, thank goodness. But that impulse to kind of destroy art, I don't think Lizzo had it because she seemed like she respected the flute. She seemed like she kind of treated the flute with honor, you know, like a musician. You know, I've taught music for a long time, and I don't teach it that much now, but I used to teach a fair amount of piano, and parents would ask me, when is someone old enough to play the piano, like if they had a little kid? And I would say, you know, there's no one age. What I would say is a good guide, if the children are old enough to respect the instrument, not kind of poke on it, you know, or pound the damper pedal with their, like it was, you know, a toy or something. If they're kind of old enough to sit at the piano and respect it, then they're old enough to have some piano lessons. And I had the feeling like Lizzo respected the flute. She wasn't sort of manhandling it. But a lot of her supporters seemed kind of to see it more as some sort of a cultural, political moment than a moment in music and American history where, you know, we got this flute out and a popular American musician played it. I think that would be something that kind of would bring us all together. And like I said, I'm not going to comment on her weight or how she was dressed. I'm not going to go there. You know, I'm no fashion show myself. So, more power to her. And she seemed to smile. I think she played a Jethro Tull song, so she's a good flautist if she can play some Jethro Tull. The other thing I kind of wanted to close with along those lines, in Majorca, that's an island in the Mediterranean. I've never been there, but it's a very beautiful island, very beautiful climate. And Frédéric Chopin, when he was dying of tuberculosis, went and lived on that island with his lover and friend, George Sand. It's a very kind of famous period of Chopin's life. He wrote a lot of his beautiful preludes while he was there. And I've never been there, but if you go to Majorca, and I would love to go, they have one of the Chopin pianos there. And it's the piano that Frédéric Chopin wrote some of that beautiful piano music, some of the finest, most wonderful piano music ever put to paper, was written on this one piano in Majorca, and they still have the piano there. And they play it sometimes. They play it sometimes, and, I think it's that. And again, it's kind of like I said about little kids. They let people play that piano if they respect it. They don't just let people get up and kind of bang on it like a tourist just to, take a selfie with Chopin's piano and pound on middle C or something. But if people know how to play the piano and they respect it, they do, with supervision, allow that piano to be played. From what I understand, I know they used to. And there's some Beethoven pianos. Now, it is kind of interesting. When instruments get too old, I think you have to be careful. I think some of those Beethoven pianos that are around I don't know if they're that playable even. But if an instrument's treated with respect and played by a musician who respects the instrument, then I'm all for it. Some of the most expensive violins that are worth, I think some of them are like worth $1 million, the Stradivarius. Some of those are really like from the early 1700s, and they're great. But boy, that people have them that respect them. And it looked to me like Lizzo was treating the instrument with respect. I don't think she really conforms to everybody's idea of a classical musician, so people needed the fainting couch. And a lot of the commenters on both sides seemed to turn it into sort of a cultural, racial moment in American history rather than a moment that had to do with music and, this beautiful crystal flute that was so exquisitely made. What a precious gift to our fourth president, James Madison. It was given to him in 1813. And that was kind of the point of that. And if it was anything other than that, then yeah, I think it would be right to object. And I think a lot of people, I think in a way it's sort of, they're the ones who have a problem with race and things. They were the ones that kind of turned it into, here's a woman playing James Madison's flute. They don't see it as music. They all they see is that sort of culture wars narrative. They can't just see a woman playing a flute. Yeah, she's fat. Excuse me. Yeah, she's overweight. Yeah, she's not dressed up to the standards of the cotillion. But they don't see, okay, this is someone playing a flute with, the people that were in charge of the flute were kind of there to make sure everything was okay with the flute. And okay, that's a neat thing. They're the kind of the ones that have turned it into something else. And I think that's a sad statement about where we are. One other point about, though, preserving art and history, I do think there's an impulse to destroy. Just a couple weeks ago, some of these climate change activists, they glued themselves to John Constable's painting, The Hay Wain. Now, we had that painting in our house when I was a boy, not the original, unfortunately, but that painting was in our living room when I was a kid, John Constable's The Hay Wain. It's a great painting by the great English Romantic painter, John Constable, kind of the English countryside, painted during the time of industrialization, so it was kind of a romanticization of the sort of quaint, beautiful, quiet, idyllic English countryside. Well, these climate change activists, I think, glued themselves to the painting. Now, they didn't hurt it, but that's a threat. people that do that, that's a threat to the art. That's make. I think they did something kind of similar with the Mona Lisa, and just a couple days ago, people were throwing paint on Big Ben in London. Those are threats to arts and culture, and we had all that destruction of statuary 2 years ago, and that's always to be avoided because that's our history. That's our and it's also represents excellence in human creativity and ingenuity and skill. Those things were made with people's hands. And sometimes I think people that can't create anything are the ones that always want to destroy everything. That's sort of a historical theme I've noticed. If you can't create things, a lot of times people hate things. I don't know. But so I do think we're right to be wary of the impulse to sort of desecrate, or maybe even destroy precious, cherished memories and also objects and artifacts and artistic representations of U.S. history. I can't think of one time where all these things have been destroyed, tossed in rivers, spray painted with graffiti. That's all disgusting and wrong, and we should be a lot more outraged about it than we are. But I didn't get any impression like that with Lizzo. She just seemed, like I said, she didn't conform to a lot of stereotypes of what people are supposed to do when they play a fancy flute in classical music. But her flute playing seemed quite good. She seemed like she was well trained and was playing classical music. So I had no problem with it. More power to her. And I just wish we could all come together and see it as kind of a cool thing rather than turning into a culture issue. I hope I'm not contributing in some way by even commenting on it, because my point is that we should kind of celebrate these instruments and these things in our history. And if Lizzo kind of reminded us of this flute and how cool it was, and back when the time when we had presidents who played music and didn't just scream at each other and try. So I thought it was good. I didn't really have a problem with it, but I do think some of the reaction to it showed that sort of pessimistic view of American history, that pessimistic view of the people who founded this country, and to some extent that threat to art, like the people that glued themselves to a priceless English Romantic painting. That they didn't hurt it, but that's like a threat to the painting, in my opinion. You go into the London Gallery and glue yourself to a painting that's that valuable, and not just in monetary terms. That is that precious to the cultural legacy that England's produced over a 1,000-year period. Then you're just a Philistine. And but I didn't get that impression about Lizzo. More power to her. And I don't know anything about her, and I don't think I'm not planning on listening to her music. I did see she played some Jethro Tull, so more power to her. And as a person who struggled with my weight, I'm all for her. She might want to visit hopefully she can afford maybe some wardrobe upgrades or something. I don't know, but that's neither here nor there. I didn't get the impression she meant anything by it. I think a lot of the comments are the ones that have made, the commenters are the ones that have kind of driven the once again, they parted the sea, away from the middle. Everything polarizes. And but I respect art, and I respect history. And the destruction of art and history is something that happens periodically in history. And I can't think of one time where it's been good. And, I sort of think when everyone said, oh, James Madison's flute, and it was kind of a negative view of Madison. That is that kind of negative impulse, which is sort of like just a little taste of that, tossing a statue in a river, or gluing yourself to a beautiful oil painting. Can you oil paint? I doubt it. I can't either. Pretty damn hard. I think they did something like that with Da Vinci's Mona Lisa too. Glued themselves to it or did something to it. Just put whipped cream on. I don't know. The several paintings have sort of endured that kind of veiled threat. That's a veiled threat to art. But I didn't get that impression from Lizzo. I sort of did from some of the comments of people who saw Lizzo and were kind of reading all these cultural attitudes and mentalities into her playing that flute. You know, I don't think she conforms to the image of what everybody thinks a classical musician should look like or sound like, and maybe that's our problem, not hers, because it seems like she knew what she was doing and she played well. So more power to her. Thank you. God bless you.